Over the past few decades, the world witnessed one of the most astonishing stories of the 21st century, the rise of China's tech industry. From humble beginnings, the country built a digital empire where companies not only transformed how people live, work, and communicate, but also unlocked the promise of a better life for an entire generation. But something changed along the way. What happens when an industry once defined by speed, ambition, and innovation suddenly collapses? To understand where this dramatic shift truly began, we need to trace the industry's origins back to the late 1990s and early 2000s. This was the beginning of a new era that witnessed the emergence of Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, later known as BAT. Baidu became China's leading search engine, Alibaba revolutionized e-commerce, and Tencent dominated social media and gaming. Together, they marked a pivotal moment not just in digital development. These companies seized the opportunity of a rapidly expanding tech landscape and thrived in a market largely protected from foreign competition by China's regulatory environment. Building on that foundation, the decade from 2010 to 2020 marked the golden age of China's tech industry. What started with BAT soon gave rise to a flourishing ecosystem of platforms that redefined daily life and drew millions into their orbit. A job at any major tech firm, from Alibaba and Tencent to emerging giants like ByteDance or JD.com, was seen as a golden ticket. Tech jobs offered what many could only dream of: high salaries, generous bonuses, social prestige, and a seemingly secure path to long-term prosperity. For an entire generation, tech became more appealing as a career path. Young workers rushed in, drawn by promising opportunities and the possibility of life-changing rewards. But chasing that dream came with real sacrifices. The grueling 996 schedule, working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, pushed workers to their physical and emotional limits. But for most, it was a trade-off they were willing to make: a chance to get ahead and secure a spot inside China's most powerful companies. As the tech sector boomed, so did everything around it. A feverish hiring spree swept the industry. Chinese tech giants, fueled by an endless stream of venture capital, raced to build sprawling platforms that combined everything from e-commerce to gaming, education, and entertainment. Companies like Alibaba grew from 13,000 employees in 2011 to over 250,000 by 2022. Tencent expanded its workforce by 800% in just a decade. Even newcomers like ByteDance hired more than 100,000 employees within 10 years of launching. With these startups came an insatiable demand for talent. That demand reshaped the country's education system. Students across China rushed to enroll in computer science, artificial intelligence, and data-related majors. At Tsinghua University, China's most prestigious institution, the trend was clear. By 2018, over 23% of graduates chose jobs in the tech industry, overtaking the once dominant finance sector. 4 of the top 5 employees for new graduates were tech giants: Huawei, Tencent, NetEase, and Alibaba. In the eyes of an entire generation, tech wasn't just a career path, it was the future. But just as tech seemed unstoppable, the government hit the brakes. Amid growing concerns that China's largest internet platforms were becoming too big, too powerful, and too unregulated, the government launched an unprecedented crackdown on the private tech sector in late 2020. China's government was no longer willing to let tech giants operate unchecked. The urge to rein in tech didn't emerge overnight. It had been brewing ever since China's internet giants began embedding themselves into daily life. Leveraging the country's mobile-first population and deep financial reserves, firms like Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent quickly expanded across industries and amassed extraordinary economic power. Their dominance in commerce, finance, and data posed not just economic risks, but a deeper threat to party oversight. In response, China began shifting away from its once supportive stance to reassert state control over the tech sector. By the late 2010s, China's leadership had already begun framing this corporate concentration as an unhealthy development, laying the groundwork for a tougher regulatory stance. In 2021, the State Administration for Market Regulation, or SAMR, issued landmark anti-monopoly guidelines for the platform economy, addressing anti-competitive practices, abuse of market dominance, and merger control. For the first time, the law offered a formal definition of digital platforms. A year later, the anti-monopoly law was revised to raise penalties for severe violations. This crackdown quickly moved beyond statements. A wave of high-profile antitrust investigations followed, targeting China's tech titans. It began with Ant Group, the fintech arm of Alibaba. In late 2020, the company was preparing for a record-breaking dual IPO in Shanghai and Hong Kong, set to raise $32 billion in what would have been the largest public offering in history. But just days before the listing, founder Jack Ma publicly criticized China's financial regulators, calling their rules antiquated and in need of reform. In response, the government abruptly blocked the IPO, sending shockwaves through the global financial and tech worlds. As the New York Times later put it, the move was designed to let private companies know where they stand next to the state. With this sweeping show of control, even China's most powerful firms were not spared. In April 2021, Alibaba was fined a record RMB 18.2 billion, that's around 2.8 billion US dollars, for abusing its dominance in the online retail market. Shortly after, regulators summoned 34 tech giants, warning them to pay full heed to the warnings of Alibaba's case. By July, authorities began retroactively reviewing past mergers and acquisitions, penalizing companies like Tencent, Alibaba, and Didi for failing to report deals, each fine reaching the legal maximum. Didi, one of China's top ride-hailing firms, was pulled from app stores just days after its U.S. IPO, triggering investor panic. Online education platforms were ordered to become nonprofits, wiping out billions in market value. Gaming companies faced curfews for minors and approval freezes. New rules on data security and online content tightened the grip even further. The message was clear: no matter their size, China's tech titans would be brought firmly back under state control. China's crackdown wiped out trillions of dollars in market value, stalling what had been one of the powerhouses of the world's second-largest economy. Millions of tech workers were laid off, and what used to be a golden ticket to prosperity suddenly turned into a cautionary tale. By the end of 2023, China's big three tech firms, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, had cut nearly 25,000 jobs compared to the previous year. And that's just the visible part of the iceberg. Startups, e-commerce, platforms, ed-tech firms, and gaming companies have all faced similar cuts. For many young professionals, the collapse of tech was a rude awakening. One thing became clear: tech was no longer a safe bet. Workers began flocking to stable jobs in government agencies and state-owned enterprises, positions that offered lighter workloads, fixed hours, less pressure, retirement benefits, and most importantly, a way to escape the relentless 996 work culture. The flight toward stability marked the return of the so-called Iron Rice Bowl. In 2022, more than 2.12 million people signed up for China's National Civil Service exam, a dramatic jump from 1.58 million in 2020. They were all competing for just 31,200 positions, and that was only for central government posts. At the provincial and local levels, nearly 9 million people applied for public sector jobs. Quote, some graduates were even offered lucrative tech jobs at companies like Huawei and Tencent, with annual salaries as high as $62,700. But in the end, they chose to work for the government in cybersecurity departments. The dean of engineering at the leading university in Guangdong said, the harsh truth is, even the Iron Rice Bowl can break. What was once considered a safe place, a steady government job with lifelong benefits, is now beginning to fracture under mounting economic pressure. Faced with ballooning local debt, many provincial and city governments have been forced to tighten their belts by reducing spending, cutting pensions, delaying salaries, and reducing contract jobs. Even though Beijing has rolled out measures to ease local fiscal burdens and support struggling regions, the pressure remains too great. In a sign of shifting priorities, the central government has announced plans to shrink the civil service, with a 5% cut in positions over the next 5 years. For a generation raised to believe that working for the state was the safest and most stable path, Especially in a time when the tech industry is crumbling, this new reality has become a second rude awakening. Unsurprisingly, the civil service no longer holds the intense allure it did just a few years ago. Having stifled its tech giants and now shrinking the state's job market, what's next for China's government to reignite public hope? After putting an end to the era of unchecked growth among tech giants, China is not merely cracking down on the tech industry, it is actively rebuilding it under a new model. The focus has shifted away from mass consumer apps and social media platforms toward core technologies, commonly referred to as hard tech, ranging from AI and semiconductors to clean energy. This is a strategic move that Beijing has long been preparing for. As early as 2015, Beijing pursued its Made in China 2025 policy, urging domestic companies to strengthen their manufacturing capabilities in high-tech sectors that were once import-dependent. This strategy helped China become the producer of a third of the world's manufactured goods and a global leader in electric vehicles, batteries, and solar panels. Today, that same approach is being applied to critical technologies such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and clean energy. Over the past decade, the government has heavily invested in these sectors to secure the country's technological self-reliance. The state has poured capital into nurturing talent, offering competitive salaries and career opportunities. To centralize the country's engineering brainpower, Beijing has funded a nationwide network of advanced laboratories, where cutting-edge AI research is conducted in collaboration with major tech firms like Alibaba and ByteDance. At the same time, banks and local governments have been instructed to extend credit to hundreds of tech startups. Since 2014, nearly $100 billion has been funneled into a national semiconductor fund, with another $8.5 billion pledged this April to support early-stage AI startups. Across cities, local authorities have built entire tech incubator districts, such as Dreamtown in Hangzhou, home to Alibaba and DeepSeek, designed to attract and retain top AI talent. For both government and the public, the rise of hard tech represents not just industrial progress, but a broader shift in line with the demands of a new era. Today, working in hard tech means more than just earning a high salary or gaining prestige. It means contributing to national development. For many young Chinese engineers, this combination has turned hard tech into the most aspirational career path. The shift also redefined the country's place in the global tech race. The breakthrough of the DeepSeek model earlier this year stands as a powerful example of innovation under constraint. China's tech industry is no longer just about the rise and fall of an industry. It's about a state-led transformation. The country has not simply cracked down on big tech. It has deliberately dismantled the old model, fast, privately driven, and centered on individual wealth. In its place, China is building a new system under firm state guidance, one that strategically aligns technological development with national priorities and long-term goals. For millions of workers, this shift marks the end of an era and the start of another where success is defined not by speed or personal ambition, but by stability within a state-led system. The tech worker's journey is no longer about climbing fast, but about finding security through alignment with the national vision. This is China's way of reshaping and consolidating control over its strategic resources. But it also raises a question. Is this truly about securing the company's future, or is it a form of long-term restraint on the innovative power of tech giants?